who's on here. This is Dr. Franco Calaveri from it's
Vancouver, Canada.
I know Vancouver, Canada, but your company is
Biologic Pharma Medical. We're a drug research organization. Yes.
And you'd make the advanced medical solutions products, is that?
We do. We make the products using our patented technologies that deliver the pharmacology we're about to speak to. Yes.
Yeah. So, and we have a nice offer from Jackie, our liaison, that'll talk to you about when we're done. So, Dr. Calaveri, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. You said you wanted to. Was that your little philosophy you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for, where we come from. If everybody, I think most of the people we see were on there. I mean, I could do a 30-second nutshell to cap it and then move on.
Do that because I didn't get that on that. So we record this, we put it on our website. That's okay with you?
Yes, sure.
And we'll let folks in. We get questions in the chat. Do you like to do them as they come along, or do you usually really do them at the end so we don't interrupt? So
yeah, let's save them until the end and then we can just collectively deal with them.
Okay. All right. Thank you really for coming. I can tell this is going to be very interesting and pretty exciting. And before you even begin, do you deal with any peptides at all?
Well, the only one we've begun to focus on significantly, well, in terms of drugs that are peptide related, no. We try to induce peptide activity, but not particular peptides, other than sirtuin activation. We're targeting sirtuin activation, but not peptide drugs.
All right, because that's in the news this week. So
yes.
Okay, and then with that, Dr. Calaveri, please take the floor, and I'll get out of your way.
Good. I got to see where I'm sharing this. I'll share screen here.
Share screen.
Okay. I got to see where they actually downloaded my. Hang on a sec here. Oh, here we are. Okay, there we are. So as I resurrect this PowerPoint, I want to say first of all that I thought I was only being interviewed. I didn't have a clear PowerPoint prepared, so I pulled up some slides that I had from previous work to create an informal dialogue that we're going to deliver today. I wanted to repeat what I was talking about, though, and that was the philosophy that I come from. I've been in the natural health space since 1990. It was a long time ago. I was a youngster studying my undergrad at the University of British Columbia. I did my undergrad in human nutrition and biochemistry. The focus at the time for me as a young man was leveraging this knowledge to enhance physical performance as much as I could. I was a bodybuilder at the time. I'd won Mr. Vancouver, Mr. British Columbia, Mr. Western Canada, the national championships here. I went to Los Angeles and competed in the IFBB Weider Pro Qualifier, won that. But as you know, you begin to escalate in that sport at that level, and eventually it becomes an unhealthy sport. You start training like that to feel healthy and fit, and the competitive aspect of it takes over, and you have to make an adult decision at that time. And for me, my passion, my original impetus for all of what I did in sport and vice versa in academics was really accrual of information and knowledge, and that's been my focus. See if I can get this PowerPoint up. Share. So I started out in the natural health industry and conceived a sports nutrition company, combining and congealing a lot of the philosophies that I had. And eventually, after selling the company, because my focus was accrual of information and studying and research, I went back to do my PhD at the University of British Columbia, continued work in an international level and phase with an Indian university. And the basis was that I had begun studying and researching Indian medicines, natural medicines. And I wasn't interested in studying the holistic approach, but more isolation of actives to create a selective element to these polypharmacological agents. And we know in allopathic medicine, we're taught that selective medicines have a better application, an easier application, because it's easier to control the pharmacology. There's a reduced likelihood of adverse events. But the reality is, I think this adverse events reduction is a fallacy, because, when we're studying a specific target, we're not seeing what else is happening in that cell in terms of other targets and how we're affecting health in general. And we see that when these drugs go in the population and are affected by the diverse genetic profiles of individuals, different single nucleotide polymorphisms that affect these drugs in different ways. So I began to look at these natural medicines much in the same way that allopathic medical drug models are looking at them. And what I did was I began to isolate each of the constituents in our lab. And we have a drug research lab that's equipped like most or any pharmaceutical lab. And we'll take many of the drugs that are in the marketplace today that are successfully treating many conditions, many people with conditions, and then we'll use those as positive controls in our studies. And we'll isolate the constituents in all these different natural medicines that create a polypharmacology to be able to understand how each of them affects certain drug targets and disease pathologies, and genomically how the genome is affected, whether it's acetylation or turning on or off various genes that are functioning to support restorative activity. And then the idea here is to really understand where the actives are in these natural medicines, isolate them, and then regenerate or re-engineer the natural medicine so that we're not only standardizing based on a 95% curcumin, for instance, because we all know that curcumin has anti-inflammatory activity. What most people don't know from the beginning is that 95% curcumin is made up of 3 curcuminoids. And although they have significant homology, they're very similar in structure, there are slight differences that contribute a differential pharmacology. And the question is, how, why, and what does that differential pharmacology do if we're able to understand it? The question I've always had is, if you are consuming a 95% curcumin or prescribing it for a disorder that's inflammatory in nature, from lot to lot and batch to batch, the curcuminoid proportions will change. And if that happens and they have a slightly different molecular structure, how does that change the pharmacology? And so that only by mapping the pharmacology of each. And what we did at that time is that actually became my PhD thesis subject matter, is studying the NF-kappa B signaling pathway, which is directly associated with inflammatory pathology, and in the context of these curcuminoids, and which curcuminoid affected which protein in the pathway. And we found that there are synergistic targets. And if you manipulate the proportion of the curcuminoids so that you're getting the benefit of all of them towards those synergistic drug targets, the anti-inflammatory activity, for instance, of that curcuminoid is much more profound than regular curcuminoid extracts. Now, a typical curcuminoid extract will have about 2 to 3% BDMC, for instance, bis-dimethoxycurcumin. And the rest of the curcumin content comes from curcumin 1 or D-ferulanyl methane or dimethoxycurcumin. And if we're able to increase the curcumin 3 level or bis-dimethoxycurcumin level so that it's affecting a protein called MSK1, and that was one of my discoveries that led to a patent development and other things in regards to curcumin, we're able to enhance the effects of that curcumin's anti-inflammatory effect significantly. And in fact, so significantly that it positively affects conditions as profound as autoimmune conditions. And this was the research I did that changed my life. And this is the reason why I've taken this path in my life since I was 26 to divert from pure business to doing the research on these natural medicines, because that discovery changed my life completely and helped me cope with ulcerative colitis, and allowed me to live a normal life with severe ulcerative colitis that derailed me in 91. I was hospitalized. I lost 25 pounds. They didn't know what I had. Eventually I was diagnosed. And I won Mr. North America a year later after going back on what I thought was working for me and negating the need for a colonoscopy, a resection of the colon. And, I'm here today because, and doing what I do, because that was my profound life-changing event, which taught me, there are natural medicines that we know deliver a result. The question is, can we find and isolate the true actives within them to create a selective natural medicine that still delivers holistic activity, standardize it to that one selective compound, as well as the 95% curcumin, but also 35-40% bismuth-oxycurcumin instead of the 3 that naturally exist. And so I took that model and began to apply it over the last 20 years of continued research on other natural medicines to create selectivity within the medicine that's supposed to be holistic and polypharmacologic. Now, I'd like to go into the specifics we're talking about here. If I can get this thing to share my PowerPoint, and let me see if that's it. Can you folks see that screen right now? Let's see here.
No, we cannot.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is it not sharing? Share screen. Share system audio. Share.
We still see you. There we go. There we go. Fireside chat.
Yep, there we go. You had it there for a minute. You can get past here. It says your screen sharing right here.
It looks like you're also muted. There you go.
All right. An alternative would be if you email me the slides and I can put them up for you. I can't get it work the other way. So. I think if you hit cancel here, saver. Yeah. Yeah, except that you're muted now.
It's allowing me to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
There we go. Now you got
Okay. But is that?
Now I'm looking at me. I know what anybody else is looking at. I know what I look like. You can get it off.
Okay. Is that visible?
That's it. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, perfect. So what we've done here, there are 2 different technologies that we've combined here. The hunger GLP-1 is a separate technology to the thermo GLP-1, but they both seem to have independent features. And I have to tell you, as we study these technologies for activity, we're, for instance, in this case, looking for GLP-1 induction, we look for homology within the structure of various elements. And in the case of thermal GLP, I'm going to start with thermal GLP-1. Thermal GLP-1 was originally studied for its ability to activate thermogenesis. Thermogenesis, most of you are likely aware of, is the capacity for the body to utilize energy substrates, and in particular here, fatty acids or fat, to generate heat from those substrates, as opposed to having them go down the path in the mitochondrial oxidative activity, have them then go down the path to create ATP. Now, most of us are born with a significant amount of brown adipose fat tissue. As infants, we have a lot of this brown fat that blankets our organs and sits dorsally to help control temperature. And the idea is that, as infants, we don't have the capacity to shiver if we're cold, and that shivering creates the friction needed for thermogenic or temperature control. So infants have this built-in mechanism, brown adipose tissue, that burns fat as a primary energy source to create heat. Now, I'm going to go into fundamental activity, assuming that you folks don't have this knowledge, but I'm sure you do. So forgive me if I'm going into fundamentals that are unnecessary, but I think we'll start with that. And we have white adipose tissue that is usually peripherally fixed, that stores fat. It does not burn fat. It's not metabolically active in the form of burning fat as energy, although the fat tissue itself is extremely active and considered an organ in the body that secretes a lot of hormones, many of which are precursors and functional as inflammatory hormones. And it's one of the reasons why with adiposity, we tend to be predisposed to inflammatory activity and insulin resistance and things like that. We have within the white adipose tissue that's peripherally embedded, we have what are called beige fat cells that are predominantly genetically wired and prepared to be burning fat as a source of energy, eliminating fat from the body. And what's amazing is that we also have this capacity with the right genetic and proteomic prompts to reactivate the brown fat that has gone dormant with age. Now, some say that the dormancy is caused by the fact that we, as we grow older, tend to control temperature in different ways. The obvious thing is clothes and our thermostat and things like that. And we don't need this protection from the environment because we consciously take care of those things. But if we're able to reactivate this brown adipose fat or the beige adipose tissue that's in the white fat, we're able to activate a natural system that burns fat independent of exercise. And I have to tell you guys, I sit with a fan right beside my desk because I'm burning hot all day. Now, and it's because I've been using obviously what we tote and toot here. And the fact is that this stuff works amazingly. We've shown it in the labs. We're about to publish research, but we've held back the research from publication in peer-reviewed journal because we're continuing to add more experimental work that validates what we're doing. This screen that you see here shows brown adipose tissue that's becoming active. And we're basically differentiating dormant cells that are the controls in the top left-hand corner. And you can see how the white spaces are opening up. And you're seeing that the brown fat is being activated and differentiated. The uncoupling protein, which is responsible for uncoupling the process of ATP generation from food substrates. So think about this. When our body uses glucose, our cells use glucose to generate ATP for energy, we have to work that energy off, whether it's a metabolic activity or whether it's physical activity, before we begin to convert and store the energy as fat. And so in this case here, the uncoupling protein activation in the brown fat changes how the proton gradient works in the mitochondria to divert it, uncoupling it, diverting it from the generation of ATP to the generation of heat energy, and that dissipates as heat. And you can literally feel that heat within 20 to 30 minutes of taking the product that's designed for this thermogenic activation. Now, interestingly enough, we've been able to go upstream to this effect and show that the same compound activates hormone-sensitive lipase. And I don't see that at all as a coincidence, because when you think of hormone-sensitive lipase, it's primarily exists in the white adipose fat. And moving down to the slide here where we're showing some of this activity from the work we're doing. And I keep, let's see if we can, I don't know if that's clear to you, but we're showing, there's 3 different targets that we've targeted there that we show activity of. And I'm going to, hormone-sensitive lipase is in the middle. And the compound that we're looking at is the one in the mauve color that shows a higher level of all of the other compounds. And this hormone-sensitive lipase is an enzyme that exists in the adipose tissue. It's typically activated by catecholamines in the body. Now, I don't know if you recall, and I think you folks are of the similar age of that I am, but there was an era when I was about, between 18 years of age and 25, where there was prolific use of, in sport and by people trying to lose weight, prolific use of what they called the ECA stack. And it was made up of ephedrine, caffeine, and aspirin. And the interesting thing is that the ephedrine, caffeine, and aspirin affected hormone-sensitive lipase and uncoupling protein in a similar way that we're affecting it, except we're not affecting an adrenergic activation to have a negative impact on hypertension, cardiovascular events like the ephedrine would have, like extraordinary levels of caffeine would have. And what we're doing here is finding in a specific gallate in the EGCG that's extracted from green tea, EGCG coupling that to butyric acid, the short chain fatty acid. And the effects are profound. If you look at the graph, it doesn't give you clear indication. When the papers are published, it will be very clear. But the other elements are forms of butyric acid, the short chain fatty acid, and different forms of gallate. And when you combine them, you get the profound spike. And the combination creates a molecular activation of the enzyme itself, hormone-sensitive lipase, that activates it to break down the triglycerides in the adipose tissue. And the triglyceride degradation then results in free fatty acids that flow into the bloodstream. Now, that's great because now you have an energy substrate that can be used up during exercise. But if you're not exercising, it's going to get deposited back into fat stores unless it's being used up by an additional source such as brown adipose tissue that we've activated with uncoupling protein activation to convert the fat into heat, as opposed to forcing it to run down a pathway for ATP production, which then otherwise requires exercise to expend that ATP, or it gets stored as fat. So you can see there's an interesting phenomenon here by the same molecule that's activating UCP and activating hormone-sensitive lipase. These are conserved activities in the body that relate consecutively and supportively to fat metabolism and helping the body get rid of calories it doesn't need. And so, we went several steps further to determine how are these compounds affecting the mitochondria? How are they affecting other elements of the metabolism in the cell? We show also in this graph ATP5A. And ATP5A is a subunit of ATP synthase. And when we're activating ATP5A or showing that in the cell, we're increasing the amount of this protein, we're indicating a couple of things. We're indicating that there's more activity in the mitochondria, and it's indicative of mitochondrial biogenesis. And mitochondrial biogenesis is exactly what's happening in the brown adipose tissue. We're increasing uncoupling protein, increasing the number of mitochondria so that we're creating a fat-burning furnace in that brown fat that you've all had idling for decades because you haven't required it. It is the same activity we see occurring when you fast and when you cold plunge. So when you put load on the body in the form of cold plunging, there are various things that happen. And one of the things we began to do is study which proteins are activated during cold plunge that are implicated in the restorative and recovery that people claim they are achieving. We're finding that this compound is affecting the sirtuin proteins, which is upstream of this, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but affecting many of these same systems to improve the body's capacity to cope with that cold plunge, to cope with the cold and protect the body from and increase the temperature of the body against that cold. So the other thing that you've seen that we show in summary here is that we're activating mTOR, and mTOR is a molecule, is a protein, a kinase that functions to improve anabolic drive. And anabolic drive in terms of lean body mass activation. It's also involved in the activation of other activities in the cell that involves anabolic drive. One of the negative or adverse events that we've seen with semaglutide or GLP-1 agonists, we've seen mTOR inhibition. And I don't know if you've seen or heard of a lot of the adverse events in the field with GLP-1 agonists. And one of them is the wasting of muscle mass, that as much as 1/3 or more of the weight lost is attributed to lost lean body mass. And that's not likely a great thing. Although there are some people that require the support of a GLP-1 agonist, the reality is that these agonists are synthetic GLP-1 peptides. And the GLP-1 peptide itself, it doesn't have the same negative effect on mTOR, the endogenous GLP-1. Now, the semaglutide, the synthetic GLP-1 peptide, has various amino acids that have been replaced. And that is the way that you would have to develop the peptide in order to qualify it for patent status. Nevertheless, when you change out the peptides when you change out the amino acids in these peptides, you change the configuration, the three-dimensional configuration, and how they're going to function on receptor sites. And so it may work for some and it may not work in others. In this case, we're showing that it does inhibit, in fact, inhibits mTOR activity, and that might be one of the mechanisms that relates to the muscle wasting that semaglutide and other analogs like it are inducing in terms of the weight loss. So in the long run, what will happen with a lot of those patients, if they're on it for too long, if they've lost too much lean body mass, it will become very difficult for them to maintain the body mass that they have after they come off the drug, because the lean body mass won't be metabolically active the way it was before to help burn calories. Nevertheless, I'm not against I'm not one that pins myself against pharmaceuticals versus nutraceuticals. I believe that there is a place for GLP-1 for those who require it, but in creating the window of opportunity for them to make lifestyle changes that support long-term recovery and restoration. We're showing with that thermo GLP-1, we're activating SIRT proteins. The sirtuin proteins, you've probably heard of the sirtuin proteins. There are 7 of them. They are involved. They're the latest craze in anti-aging and recovery and restorative activity in regards to metabolic syndrome, glucose management. I think the SIRTs are an amazing channel, an amazing way to restore genomic activity to default stages for when we were younger. They're known to deacetylate various aspects of the genome that have become acetylated through epigenetic activity, and that affects then genomic activity that should be restoring tissue and then begins to falter in terms of restoration. So we're now looking deeper at the sirtuine activity that we've been able to identify. There are different sirtuine proteins, some of which are in the cytosol, some are in the nucleus, some are in the mitochondria, and they pretty much, for the most part, are involved in restorative activity. So the research that we're doing on these compounds, although we're finding some amazing targets that are extremely positive in terms of metabolic health, we're still in that research process, redefining many of the other activities and new activities that we're adding to a research paper that's been evolving. And we're going to need to stop shortly so that we can publish this paper, but we continue to find new things that I believe may cause us to migrate into a second paper. Otherwise, we're never going to be able to publish this. I'm going to move on a little bit to the hunger GLP-1 agent. And because we were studying the hunger product, this is an amazing product that we began to develop as a natural sweetener because we needed to use a substance that was able to sweeten protein powders, sweeten other compounds that we were making beverage mixes with, but would be able to mask the off notes of many of these natural compounds. And this itself is natural too. And then we notice that there's tremendous appetite suppression and various aspects in how we're feeling when we're using this compound that were similar to the thermo product. So we began to study it at a molecular level to determine if it is enhancing GLP-1. And sure enough, it does show that we're enhancing endogenous secretion of natural GLP-1. And that's the difference between semaglutide and what we're doing here. The challenge is that we can't count on quantifying precise levels of GLP-1 in each of the patients because people will produce it in variable levels. And when you're using a synthetic injectable, you're able to quantify delivery. And in this case, we're inducing GLP-1 activity, which varies from individual to individual. However, the effect is tremendous because it does help people right away through GLP-1 induction control appetite. And we're also showing that it helps to support the secretion of insulin, similar to what many insulinotropic drugs do. We've tested it against many insulinotropic drugs, including in this particular study, we've tested it on over three different drugs to show an insulinogenic activity that was significantly higher. And here we've got something that has 0 carbohydrate content, 0 protein content, 0 caloric content, and delivering a sweetness that is as sweet as sugar, if not, if we use it at full concentration, between 5 times to 6 times sweeter than sugar. But what I believe is formidable about this compound is the fact that you can sweeten a coffee, you can sweeten tea, but you're getting an effect that's pharmacological as well. And we have to be careful to differentiate variations of this because as soon as we start commenting on the GLP-1 induction, we can't even use the same compound that we're using in the sweetener in terms of the nomenclature, because now we have a drug versus a sweetener agent, and we can't claim that each one will do both. We have to say, here's a sweetener that helps support appetite suppression. Then the other one will be, here's a compound that will induce GLP-1 if you put it in your coffee. So it's kind of a play on words, but we have the same compound doing the same thing, helping to sweeten an agent without the carbohydrate content and the caloric intake, as well as inducing GLP-1. We can put this in a tablet. We can put it in a capsule. We've decided to put it in a powder so it's convenient for people, and it gives them something that tastes like candy that they can replace sugar with, and therefore in addition get a pharmacological effect that's beneficial. What we've done in a nutshell here is to devise a system that supports metabolic shift in the body, that has the body improve the lipid metabolism and work towards using lipids as a primary energy substrate. Now, there is something that is quite phenomenal about this that I haven't talked about, and we don't see any research displayed about it, and we will be finalizing the research on it so that we will have functional data. And that is that this compound, the thermo product, the one I started with originally, let's see if we can go back up there. This thermo product, not only does it activate uncoupling protein and hormone sensitive lipase, but we're showing that it induces beta oxidation as well. And beta oxidation is the process by which the liver will take endogenous fat and generate ketones from it. Now this, from a medical standpoint, an allopathic medical standpoint, the ketone generation is a red flag, because we know that, ketoacidosis is a potential problem, especially for type 1 diabetics. And so we recommend, type 1 diabetics, they can use this product. You just have to keep an eye on your ketones. They're not going to escalate to deleterious levels. But just out of safekeeping and out of being diligent and responsible, we say just type 1 diabetics beware, because of the access and the regulation of ketones in type 1 diabetics is broken. And so in everyone else, and even type 2 diabetics, they don't have to worry about ketosis, because that's not really a problem that occurs. The body can still regulate ketogenesis. But what we're doing with this, and why this is great, the beta oxidative activity, is that beta oxidative activity is what contributes in large part to the appetite suppression that occurs. See, if you go on a diet that is low calorie and or low glucose, the body can still function without a problem to use fat to generate ATP in the peripheral tissues. It's the brain that pushes you to eat carbs, that gets you into starvation mode, and forces most people who try to get onto a ketogenic diet, forces them to fail, because the brain says, I need glucose. I'm going to die without glucose. And you need to go out and get me some glucose, because fat cannot cross the blood-brain barrier effectively enough to be able to serve the neurons with an ATP substrate that's functional. The second thing is that most people who are aging begin to develop various degrees of what you've likely heard of, type 3 diabetes. And type 3 diabetes is usually associated with dementia, because advanced state of dementia, whether the type 3 diabetic state is contributing to the advanced stage of dementia, or dementia itself is contributing to the advanced state of type 3 diabetes. And again, I'm going to speak to fundamentals, which you already know, I'm sure, but the type 3 diabetic state is related to blood glucose mismanagement, or insulin function, or insulin resistance in the brain. And in that state, the neurons cannot effectively utilize glucose, because insulin signaling is not functioning in the brain. That's the type 3 diabetic state. And so in late stages of dementia, when type 3 diabetes becomes a serious problem, that's when you begin to see apoptosis and severe and deleterious effects with regards to recall and memory events. And so once apoptosis begins to set in at large and at significant levels, then the dementive state becomes significantly worse fast, and the prognosis is very bad. But if we can prolong energy substrate availability to the neurons, then the brain survives for a much longer period of time effectively, even in this type 3 diabetic state and or dementia. And so this is not me speaking, but this is the research speaking. And so what we've seen is that if you induce beta oxidation, I'm circling back now to beta oxidation, to have the body convert fat into ketones, the ketones then are small substrates that are water soluble and can penetrate through the blood-brain barrier to serve the neurons with an energy substrate that's much more efficient in terms of ATP generation for the neurons. In fact, it's said that the ketone can supply in excess of 38% more ATP in the conversion to ATP in the mitochondria than glucose can in the brain. That means this is one of the reasons why people who are on ketogenic diets or are taking exogenous ketones claim that the room is brighter and they feel more cognitively capable. It's because the neurons are getting more ATP, they're functional, they're alive, they're rocking. And the ketone assimilation by the neuron is independent of insulin function. So if type 3 diabetes is a significant problem, then the ketone can still penetrate and deliver its plethora and wonder of carbon, so that the mitochondria can generate ATP from that and not need glucose whatsoever. So how does that translate into appetite and the brain driving food cravings? Well, if the brain has significant ketones to serve its needs for ATP generation, it is not starving, it is happy, it is healthy, and you can go on then this lower calorie diet and stay fasted for a much longer period of time because we're facilitating ketogenesis. Here's one of the challenges with the exogenous ketone versus induction of endogenous ketogenesis. When you take an exogenous ketone, and that's becoming quite popular, and in fact, it's a great therapeutic product for people in late stages of dementia, or people who are epileptic, even, because we know that that's how this story started, was treatment of drug-resistant epilepsy. That ketone serves the brain and calms it down and provides a healthy energy source independent of insulin function. And the brain is happy, and you're able to stay in a fasted state, and the body then, the peripheral tissues of the body will be happy to use fat as a primary energy substrate in that state. So I guess, I've covered a lot of ground in terms of different drug targets. And what I want to iterate is that I don't want to create confusion or a mismatch of different things happening. I want to highlight the fact that, what we do here is we try to compartmentalize and isolate the actives in these different botanicals, and then we'll standardize them based on what we know the active should be. And in this case, what we've done is gone upstream and downstream to different targets associated with lipid metabolism, and determined that it's not a coincidence that all of these targets are being activated by this compound. Green tea, for instance, has been known as a weight management product, but how many people have really gained functional activity from EGCG? And in this case, what we do is we'll take a specific gallate from there that we know is functioning, couple it to butyric acid, because butyric acid targets the same, being a completely different molecule, still targets the same drug target. And when we show them together, they're compounding in effect. And we're showing that biologically, we're showing that in the lab, we've shown that in the population. The next step for us now is to publish the pharmacological paper, and we're already in the process of funding the clinical work, and we're going straight into clinical research to treat type 2 diabetes, even pre-diabetic states of insulin resistance we're targeting, and lipid metabolism for the management of obesity. So that's how these products will be used long-term. Again, we're already demonstrating the pharmacological effects. I think the big next step now is we go clinically. We have to manage the fact that by doing the clinical research, we have to be very careful with the targets we're targeting and studying, because we could easily be classified as a drug once we go those steps. So natural agents doing drug-like activity based on our evolution of the research, and we're quite proud of what we're doing here. We're a bit of an island, but I think we're showing the value of the pharmacological work, and the approved medical solutions have really put faith in us. And I believe that that with the right people in place, advancing these to the right patients, we're going to see some amazing lives change. So I don't know how. Let me see if we have some questions that we can target. Am I visible? Am I audible? Is everything good?
Yes, you are.
Great.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you for all of that information. It's going to take a little while to digest it. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, hi. This is hi. This is that was a fabulous discussion Was this the work of Severo Ochoa with the uncoupling protein?
This work, the uncoupling protein originally, the uncoupling protein was discovered and actually replicated in 1965.
Was it Dr. Ochoa? He got a Nobel Prize for this. He's one of my teachers.
I'm not sure.
Yes, it was him. That's what he got the Nobel Prize for.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Severo Ochoa.
I've seen a lot of, yes, I've seen a lot of his work. I didn't realize that it was his discovery.
He got the Nobel Prize for that. For the
Rightfully
uncoupling
so.
protein.
I think this is the future of metabolic syndrome restoration, because with the activation, now here's the interesting thing, and I'm not sure of the mechanism because it's never been pinned down and we're trying to find it. With the activation of uncoupling protein, there's an immediate positive effect on glucose management. And we're not seeing the uptake of glucose in that brown adipose tissue beyond normal, that's atypical. But there has to be either an uptake of blood glucose or a reduction in the synthesis and production from gluconeogenic amino acids in the liver. So that's the next phase for us to study.
That was a beautiful, beautiful discussion. Really beautiful.
Thank you.
Incredible. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got to second that. Just impressive work.
Hey, we're having fun now. Hey,
Thank you.
hey, can I found
Touching to have support like that.
No, man, you're amazing on the lecture, but I was going to ask before I got rude. I found some semi-nude pictures of you. Can I put them up? Huh?
Don't hold it against me.
All right.
There's still a
I'm going to
family.
do that.
There's
Too
still a
late.
family show,
Too
but
late. They're up. I put them up so we can see how intense this guy is.
I actually saw them too. I didn't realize that was you though.
Holy mackerel. Hey,
Yeah,
and
you know,
aside from that, what you gave us tonight was top class 100%. We thank you very much. You're
Thank
on
you. Very
something here. It's very seldom. You know, you said since 1990. Most of us have been around since 1990. And what you're talking about now is major stuff, big breakthroughs. It happens once in a while, and I think you made it.
thank you.
And I'm going to be in touch because I have all those diseases, and will use me as a guinea pig.
We have 3 weeks.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
John, you say the same thing every week.
Hey,
Even when we had Dr. Siegel, the veterinarian on, you said you had those diseases.
well, you know, we got 3 lines of stem cells now, and or with our group, and it's all fantastic. And with what you presented tonight, it's all on the same page. It's big stuff. So thank you very much. You might save my life. Let's try it.
Thank you. That's my pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm honored. Thank you.
So, what can you give us a little regimen maybe with the products that you showed us on how to use them?
Yes. So typically, I'll tell you what I do, and I think so. I'm of a body weight of approximately 190, and I stay relatively lean. I have to tell you, if I stop using it and I keep my lifestyle same way, nothing changes, I start to see the weight come on right away. So this is kind of a countermeasure that has a significant effect. And you know, keeping lean body mass up and body fat down is a tremendous marker for preservation of age and metabolic activity. It's not the, you know, the functional final indicative marker, but it's one. What I do is take 2 in the morning, 2 thermal GLPs in the morning, with breakfast or without, whether I'm fasting, and then I'll take 2 in the afternoon around 2 o'clock. I'll use the hunger GLP-1 in my coffee or tea. I'll use it again I'll take a flask of water that I may drink twice I say approximately a liter and a half of water a day, but I'll have 3 or 4 doses of the hunger in that I sip on. And it gives it a nice little sweet edge, but you're getting a constant sip of something that supports insulin function and cognition. And you'll find that you're just sharp all day, really sharp and full of energy, full of will, full of drive. Sometimes a little bit too much drive, a little bit push, but you feel great all day. So if you have a flask of water that you drink all day, put some of the hunger GLP-1 in it, 1 or 2 doses, and then 2 capsules of the thermal in the morning, 2 capsules in the afternoon, and you're set.
Okay, great. There's follow-up questions, and there's Jackie's phone number there in the chat, 831-915-5534. And there's her email address for information on these products, and mention us. And I think there's a little bit of a discount. So
that's 10% off. So to get the 10% off, you just have to go to approvedmedicalsolutions.com, register as a practitioner. Then you'll have access to our website and be able to get everything at wholesale prices and get these products. So, and like we said, if you use the code integrative at the end at checkout, you'll get an extra 10% off the wholesale cost.
mhm. Okay, there you go. Okay, well, thank you so much. And with the
Oh, can you repeat the phone number, please? Missed the phone number. It was all
You
mumbled.
just get
it's right here in the chat.
It's in the chat box, but it's area code 831-915-5534. Oh, there it is on the screen too.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Okay. All right. Well, Dr. Calavera, we really can't thank you enough. This was great.
Thank you.
And those of you that are new,
We're looking forward to seeing your publication, as well as the phase 2 that you're heading towards.
Yeah, we'll keep you guys posted and let you know. We just had a paper from our organization published 2 weeks ago, and a cancer paper that's in peer review right now that's just about to publish. So we're very active in different areas, and I'm hoping to make a difference in the community and in the human population.
Hi, this is Dr. Patel. How do you use this for cancer patients?
Well, the cancer work was done on a different compound, not this particular product itself. So we haven't been studying this one in the context of cancer.
What do you use for cancer?
The work we did was one of the fractions from a patented ashwagandha extract. Now, we know that ashwagandha has positive effects on various types of cancer. What we did was we isolated one of the 35 with analytes to determine it was the one. And we punched cancer real hard at full capacity, and we were very effective with the treatment. And the paper's just about to publish. We had to just change some formatting for the publication. And we can send you a link to that, which shouldn't be more than a couple of weeks before it's ready and published.
That'd be fabulous.
would be great. Yes, thank you. And we can put it on our website if you want, so we can
Sure.
spread the word.
Yes.
With you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any comments, questions? Dr. Quinn, you're awful quiet tonight.
Yeah, my mind is going to this cancer thing. Like Dr. Patel said, that well, when we just look at the very beginning and say that glucose just feeds cancer like crazy, now we have a way to kind of bypass that. I think this is more than a breakthrough. This is amazing.
Well, the one thing, you're right. Glucose is an issue. I think one of the things we plan on doing when we do the clinicals with the cancer is to couple the ketogenic diet, which is facilitated by this product that you guys have here today. when you're increasing beta oxidative activity, you're serving the brain, which allows people to fast during
Did you-
treatment of chemotherapy.
Yeah, exactly. This goes along with fasting.
Did you call me?
Time-restricted eating like crazy.
Yeah, I was just. Wait, let me just make sure.
Have you seen the GLP-1 agonist increasing the recurrence of cancer?
We haven't seen that, but I have to tell you something that I found to be interesting. This is completely theoretical. In the context of mTOR, some of the cancer agents are looking at inhibiting mTOR, because mTOR can be facilitative of anabolic phase in cancer. So if the GLP-1 agonists that are synthetic are inhibiting mTOR, they would ultimately become candidates for cancer treatment.
Mhm. Okay. Great.
And again, that goes in with time-restricted eating, which will also inhibit mTOR. So it all
That's
fits
it.
together.
Yeah.
So it promotes then, it's like anti-inflammatory. And is it anti-inflammatory?
There's mild anti-inflammatory effect to this product for sure. If we ran the tests, but not nearly as effective as you'd get from the curcuminoid technology that we've developed. We actually developed a curcuminoid technology that's coupled to termerone, and we call it curcumirone. We just patented that, and that has extremely potent effects on BDNF, which also helps restore metabolic syndrome, helps improve restoration in the brain, and it's an effective agent against cancer.
I have a patient who was in a remission for breast cancer, and she used the GLP-1 agonist peptide, and she lost considerably, about 30 pounds of weight. But her white cell count was little high, and 27.29 marker is little high. So there's a big question that was that because of the using the GLP-1 agonist, or was it from something else?
Well, that's very interesting, because I've said, if you take a natural peptide and you alter the amino acid sequence of the peptide, what does the body do? If it doesn't recognize the peptide, it produces antibodies against it, and eventually begins to inhibit the activity of the peptide. In order to generate antibodies in an adaptive immune phase, you're going to see a white blood cell count originally develop.
But this peptide, in this patient, he takes the peptide in a lesser amount, it still works. So it's not building the antibodies, and it is ineffective. It is just the question that, have you noticed that it does some degree of immune suppression, or there is a problem with the immune parameters?
Well, I think there's a lot of unknowns. We have been studying GLP-1 agonists in terms of many of these different targets. When we discover different things, like we discovered this mTOR inhibition, it doesn't necessarily going to translate immediately into a disorder. It just really raises a flag. And, when you talk about immune system, white blood cell elevation is what you said originally, I thought. That would make sense in terms of a peptide that's foreign to the body.
But it was more neutrophil elevation, and lymphocytes were down. So it was not the other way around.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, at this time we're kind of theorizing. We don't know a lot about this GLP-1 and how it's going to affect the body long term. This is one of the problems with a lot of these synthetic chemicals. I mean, I think I've said many times, and I've done some posts, I think there's a lot of people that can benefit tremendously from these agonists that are synthetic, but they should be used as windows of opportunity to create the opportunity for the body to restore and to apply lifestyle changes that give people the tools then to restore physical health, as opposed to a long-term dependency, because the loss of lean body mass is going to eventually cause significant problems for most people.
That seems to be one of the complaints about all of the GLP-1s, that it causes muscle loss, muscle wasting.
Yeah. GI blockages, but the muscle wasting is why, we studied mTOR, and then we saw in our lab that mTOR is being inhibited by the semaglutide, and that's likely the mechanism for muscle wasting.
Okay. Any suggestions about getting around some of those issues, or?
Well, I think even our technology that we have, being an mTOR agonist itself that enhances mTOR activity, we've been using it with a lot of athletes who are looking for recovery from training, and it restores muscle. I got to tell you, like I say this with all honesty. When I in the last 2 years of my career in bodybuilding, when I went to the Mr. North America, I did anabolic steroids because that's what you had to do in order to compete at that level. And that's the reason why, after winning, I thought to myself, my gosh, I'm going to do this to continue this. I've reached a point where this is not healthy anymore, and pulled away. But I got to tell you, this product does improve mTOR activity to the point where muscle tone and strength increases for athletes and works quite well at high doses. But you have to increase the protein intake to accommodate for that growth. Otherwise, it won't happen.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. In order to maintain the muscle mass using this, do you have to really go like 1.5 grams per kilogram or something like that in the protein?
1 gram per pound.
1 gram.
We
had
need 1 gram per pound of body weight, which,
okay.
we had 22 athletes, 22 actual bodybuilders increase protein to 1 gram per pound and take triple the dose of this, and they all increase muscle mass. Every single one.
Wow. It's a lot of protein, though.
It is a lot. It's impossible to do with the regular food. Impossible.
Yeah,
You have to just, I did it 3 protein drinks a day plus food.
Okay.
Have you tried using a protein source that uses, the upwards of 90+% net nitrogen utilization, so that you don't have to consume as much protein?
Well, there are strategies, the essential amino acid profile that I did not use those strategies. I kind of went back to what was, what we did conventionally, but that might be a way to improve nitrogen retention with a lower level of protein, for sure.
Okay, that just was thinking that would probably be the only way most people could consume that kind of protein volume. Jeez.
It's quite a task. It's 3 big meals and 3 big protein supplements a day. At my age, it's not something I really wanted to do, but I needed to test it. We did it for 90 days. And once I was done, I was like, that's it. I don't want to see protein again for a year.
So if anybody, there are quite a few pictures of bodybuilders with your name on it on Google Images. Is that I didn't realize that.
Well, I got to tell you, it's a funny thing. I'm divorced from my 5 years ago, but my girlfriend of today, I've been with her 3 years. She said, I see these pictures on the internet. You have to be an imposter because I don't even recognize that guy. because you'd never know that was me. I don't even look anything like that today.
You're right. But so what kind of aid would you have had if if these were available when you were in in the bodybuilding world?
Well, I got to tell you, I was very creative and I was very studious. We studied a lot of, we did use essential amino acid pills. Now, the interesting thing is that we see these essential amino acids and the profile of which are shown to increase nitrogen retention. When I was a bodybuilder and, a young man, I think I was at that time 21, 22 years of age, just preparing for Mr. North America, we were using amino acid capsules because the free-form amino acids, to consume them in a powder, you may or may not know, it tastes like vomit because it's like pre-digested food. And we also used butyric acid, which is a short-chain fatty acid, in combination with them in high doses. And to gag that stuff down was terrible, but it did what we're seeing today in a lot of the research that has been resuscitated to create formal data to demonstrate that nitrogen retention today.
Okay. Well, that's part of these formulas, though, isn't it?
Well, no, a lot of what I'm doing today, yes, is centered around butyric acid, but it's actually using compounds that work synergistically at a subcellular level to further activate what we're trying to activate. It's done at that time. We did it based on what we read, what we saw other athletes doing. Today, what I'm doing is studying them at a subcellular level to fine tune these so that they're functional and validated.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Where does your nitric oxide product fall in line with these other two?
We are studying nitric oxide, but these folks have a different nitric oxide coming. It's quite phenomenal. I don't know a lot about how and what they're doing, but I know that the results have been quite incredible in terms of nitric oxide. We're showing eNOS activation in different ways, but this product they're using has been in the marketplace that they're functioning with for a long time. Very effective. I've used it and I love it.
Yeah, we've been using it also. So I'm just trying to sort of, place each one. We've had a very successful weight loss program here using the GLP-1s with some combinations, and now the FDA's decided that one of the ingredients is now illegal. So we'll be looking to alter our plan. So,
Jeez.
So I don't know if you,
Yeah.
so all the peptides are gone now, folks. So
Well, the peptides, especially if they're synthetically derived, I mean, they're suddenly going to be looked at as viewed as drugs, right?
yeah, it seems kind of a convenient, conveniently there's all sorts of problems with them that some of us have been using them for 15, 20 years. I never once saw issues that they brought up as complications. So I don't know, so anyway,
I know it's an ongoing cycle.
So anyway, yeah. So that's Dr. Burgess's domain there. So, right, John?
Yeah.
Bill, can you tell what has been approved is unapproved by FDA now? Which ingredient is unapproved?
About you name the peptide that the FDA.
You were just mentioning about GLP agonists.
No, well, the one I'm talking about that we've used with it is BPC 157, but just about all of them. Ipamorelin, CJC 1295, GHK, CU, KPV, Dr. Halas's favorite, KPV.
The thymosins.
Yeah, thymosins, all of them.
So what is the status now?
The FDA ordered the compounding pharmacies to not manufacture them anymore.
And what they have manufactured, they can still sell?
No.
Oh.
So, we've been using these for years and years without, pretty successfully too. We have stroke protocols and
Probably the drug cell went down.
That's probably it, but anyway. So we'll soldier on as always. So,
Yeah, that's one of the challenges that we have, and we have to always, as we find new discoveries, we have to determine how they're going to fit into the regulatory process and not be tagged as new drugs. And so that becomes, we have, for example, our curcumin product here in Canada and FDA. If we go over 50% BDMC, it's a drug because of the effectiveness on NF-kappa B signaling. So we have to do we got approved for COVID and respiratory disease clinical trials for the one over 50%, everything under, we are fine over the counter.
so you have to deliberately make it ineffective. Was that it?
Well, we have to deliberately make it not as effective as the drug version. Otherwise, it will get tagged and flagged. And then the challenge is, we have to do a clinical trial to demonstrate the drug activity on the indication, and that'll be a drug forevermore when it's actually naturally derived and engineered to be. It's kind of it's really sad, but you got to play by the rules, or you don't get to play.
Right. So here we go again, guys and gals. So anyway, okay, anybody else have any comments or questions? Let's see what's in the chat here. So, here's the list. AOD 9604, BPC 157, Epithalon, CJC 1295, DSIP, MK 677, Kispeptin, KPV, MOTS-C, CLAC, and CMAX. So Thymosa alpha 1 and Thymosa beta 4, they got rid of them during COVID, along with cerebral lysine. So I don't know. We've used them for ever and a day.
That's too bad. That's sad. It's funny. These pharmaceutical agencies have themselves been given regulatory, self-regulatory parameters that I think is very dangerous, and we're seeing that play out in terms of COVID and everything else. But I'm not sure how we can combat that. We're kind of stuck with what they give us.
Yeah. Well, we like I said, we soldier on. We do the best we can. So
Yeah.
You have any little summary for us there, Dr. Calaveri?
Well, I'd like to say what I think I know, and many of you realize that I think there's so much to mine in nature so far for therapeutics that it's just phenomenal. We're just inundated with opportunity. I just hope that we get more researchers that are brave enough to do what we do without worrying about how other people and other organizations target us. But I say the science, the data will speak volumes, and the data has been managing and guiding and navigating what we do. We don't try to go by, we don't try to theorize. We just try to follow the data, and hopefully it leads us down the path of life-changing events.
When we start using some of your products, how soon? What kind of changes can we anticipate? How soon do we notice an effect? Obviously it's dose related? I'm certain. So
yeah. So you're right, it is dose related. And what we find for the majority of people who have a reasonably healthy lifestyle, for example, on the brown adipose tissue side, when you take it, within hours, you're going to feel body temperature go up because the brown fat is mildly active, and you start to stimulate the active brown fat while the body begins to convert and differentiate the rest of the brown fat. And over time, you start to get warmer and warmer. For a lot of people who are obese, they may not feel that heat increment for weeks because it'll take several weeks for that brown fat to differentiate. However, everybody feels the cognitive effects right away. And that's because of the beta oxidative activity that's immediate and begins to convert fat into the ketones, and then the brain gets a complete light up right away. And that is what gives you the drive and the capacity to begin to make lifestyle changes, because the mind is going to work with you towards your goal, and you're able to generate that will and the drive to make change. So you start to feel that right away. Within hours, you start to feel the brain light up, the room's brighter, and you feel really good. A lot of people who are depressed, anxious, and don't have that mental drive, there's a complete shift within hours. And then you feel within several hours to a day that body heat increasing.
That's for a question for a postmenopausal symptomatic woman using that to lose weight. They already have a problem with feeling hot. Does that just intensify it, or do you know?
Well, we have had women, complain about, body temperature. I think in general, it hasn't been something that we've seen that prolific. And I think that what happens in this case is that you're beginning to normalize body temperature. You're beginning to normalize that feeling of my body temperature is up, and you maybe they don't feel the fluctuations, but we're not getting that that response and that adverse effect being reported at all. We've had a few that have said, yeah, I'm warmer, but it's not intolerable. I'm fine.
Okay, so everybody knows what my next question is going to be. What are the effect of these products on hormones then? So does it have you looked at that?
Well, yeah, based on the targets of activity, we don't see that there's any effects on the hormones. However, we don't know the full gamut of the effects systemically. There shouldn't be, based on how they work. These are working at a metabolic level, not at a level where hormones are being induced. However, I don't want to be completely absolute about that, because we don't know for sure. What I do know is that we're not going to we're not affecting the pituitary gland. We're not affecting ACTH and adrenal glands. I can't see it being a factor, but I can't say no for sure.
What about the converting enzymes, the enzymes that create the chemical reactions that sort of generate the hormones?
We are definitely, seeing conversion in brown adipose fat. I don't know how far. I can't comment beyond what we're studying at the moment. And as we're just expanding the studies as we go, and reporting as we go, which likely speaks more than to how many pharmaceuticals are studied selectively. We're expanding what we study as we go.
If I recall correctly, doesn't resveratrol increase convert white fat to brown fat?
White fat can't be converted, but what's happened is there's been a misunderstanding. There's beige fat embedded in white fat cells. Those are supposed to be active, and those then become active and you do have to take a lot of resveratrol to begin activation. That doesn't necessarily work against. One of the things that actually inhibits these brown fat cells is subclinical inflammation. Many of these cytokines associated with inflammation, TNF alpha specifically, contribute to the de-escalation of uncoupling protein in these fats, which then shuts off thermogenic activity. In fact, I mentioned earlier the common many decades ago, the ECA stack, ephedrine, caffeine, aspirin. Aspirin's role in that activity was the inhibition of COX and production of prostaglandins that affected inflammatory activity. And that allowed these compounds to work their wonders in terms of activating uncoupling protein. And in this case, we're not requiring that, because we've tried to eliminate whatever synergistic activities we have to apply, because adding another COX inhibitor would have had another layer of adverse events.
Can you give us a couple of other examples of supplements or chemicals that you've worked with that will increase brown fat thermogenesis?
Common
Common ones.
we do have another compound that showed very similar activity, because once we activated these pathways, we begin to test a whole bunch of other compounds. We have another one we call thermobutyrate, which is the complexing of chlorogenic acid with the butyric acid, which affects the exact same enzymatic pathways. And that's another compound. We actually patented that as well. And we can actually bond them through a carboxylation bond, and that creates a new molecule, which is a drug, or we can actually get the same effect by blending them.
Okay, great. Okay, I think I'm questioning.
Obviously to keep us all treating people with these compounds, we sell it all as a blended compound, and then we're going to do the clinical trials on a complex compound for the new drug.
Mhm. Okay. Great. All right. Well, I already called Jackie and told her I put my order in. So
And actually, I want to make one quick note too, really quick regarding the dosing of the thermo formula. If you're under 179, you only take 1 capsule. And if you're over 179, then you'll take 2. So it can be very cost effective to make sure you only need, 1 bottle could last 2 months if you're under 179 pounds. So just wanted to make sure that note was made.
okay.
Yep, that'll work.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Pretty great.
This was great, Dr. Calaveri. Thank you so much. And I know it was a last minute thing, so it's much appreciated.
That's great. My pleasure. When I was commenting on, oh my gosh, you guys want me to present, I wasn't backing out or anything. It was like, wait a minute, these folks are going to expect a formal presentation with everything. I thought I was just being interviewed, but I love this. Fireside chat's the best way to go.
We're not that formal here, so.
Anyways, I appreciate you folks taking the time
Thank
to
you.
listen in. It's my pleasure.
Appreciate you. By the way, everybody, next week, same time, same station, we have our old friend, Dr. Jeffrey Block is back, and he's going to be giving us an update on his world of cannabis, including his, he's been testifying at the Florida State Legislature in different capacities as for legalizing things on a state and national level. So that'll be next week. Okay. So same time, same station. If you're interested, Dr. Calavera will add you to our email list. And if you're not,
I'd love to listen in. Yes, please.
Okay, we'll make sure you get the info. We're here every week. This week actually is 3 years we've been doing this every Tuesday except one.
Wow.
It's 3 years. Yeah.
Outstanding job, Dr. Bill.
So
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So
You guys are great.
try to keep it interesting and cutting edge. So next week, by the way, if you guys have nothing to do, I'm going to be in Houston at the Age Management Medical Group Thursday the 19th. I'm speaking on basic hormones for men. And then on Sunday, I'm doing non-hormonal manipulations to manipulate hormones. So how to raise your testosterone, or how to lower your testosterone if need be without using testosterone. And we're going to go through all the 10 major hormones. So if you need some CME credits, it's a really fun group. They're really nice. They're much less formal than A4M. And we have a really good time with them. So, and Stefan Hartman can vouch to that. He's been there. So it's at Houston next week. It's agemed.org, agemed.org. And if you're there, I think the physician the male physician who takes 8 milligrams of estradiol because he thinks estradiol levels should be 200 for males. I think he's speaking again too, so you can question him. So,
I can't wait, man.
So,
It can't be any worse than what I saw on the roster for A4M this year. It's like vegan brainwashing and blue zones. I was like, I can't go to this. Yeah, is anyone going to that?
I was going to go then they got Dr. Oz as their keynote speaker too. So,
I saw that. Isn't that guy like a shill for like the randomest like infomercial stuff?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. So you want to, Dr. Calaveri, are we good here? I mean, do you have any?
Yeah.
I don't want to cut you off.
No, don't worry about that. But I can tell you, I can speak to the estrogen. When we were bodybuilding, when I was bodybuilding, we were very technical with the application. And the last 2 years I did do anabolics, and we had to manage the aromatase activity and conversion of testosterone to estrogen before these events, because the estrogen would cause water retention, and you don't want that. But I got to tell you, as soon as you start dropping that estrogen activity with these inhibitors, you feel terrible. And if you start studying that, the estrogen is required for anti-inflammatory activity to ensue endogenously. So there's got to be something just that speaks to that from the scientific standpoint, because that estrogen testosterone has to be balanced perfectly.
Yeah, we know that. When we first started doing this 20 years ago, we didn't really have anything to go on except you gym rats. I didn't know you were one of them.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Our goals were total testosterone of 1,500 and this is for guys, and we would get estrogens to 0. And I think we learned that was wrong and wrong. But there's a whole cadre of folks especially at this conference. They last year in April they had 4 lectures on you do not just let the estrogen rise, that the level doesn't matter. Now, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've had 10,000 men easily I've treated. When their estrogen levels go over 40, over 50, we get all sorts of side effects from it. And we don't get it to 0, but to just let it rise to 150, 175 is just crazy to me. I don't know. Steve, what do you think?
Hey, someone here mentioned the muscle loss with the semaglutide, and I was just during this call, I was making a prescription for just the fix for this, and it's anabolics. It's oxandrolone and nandrolone. These things protect you against from that muscle loss.
Because they activate mTOR. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
The anabolic drive mechanisms are mTOR activation to induce protein synthesis.
We've been using creatine also. So
creatine, injectable carnitine, all of that, and then the anabolics, testosterone, oxandrolone, and nandrolone. And obviously the growth.
So I do.
What was that?
I do prescribe to. I work for my own. I take testosterone and a small amount of an estrogen blocker through Glow Clinic. I take an anti-aging program. Formerly, I just did blood work today. Every 60 days, I do blood work for them to monitor it. But I have to say, I've never felt better in my life, and I never thought I would do this again. But at my age, it was something obviously that was something I would see that I may do. In the last 2.5 years, I did go to hormone therapy and take a TRT with an estrogen blocker. I take twice a week, and growth hormone. So I feel unbelievably amazing.
Yeah, excellent. That's pretty much the regimen. We find total testosterone 700 to 900 is usually pretty ideal. Anything over that is we're going to see side effects without any real benefit. Ideally 15 to 25. Anything over 40, we want to control it. I mean, that's kind of what we've been doing. But like I said, there's one guy, he's doing pellets. He gets the testosterone levels to 2,000, 2,200, and then estrogens he said his was right. Steve, you were there, 175, I think he said, right?
Yeah, he had no problem with that.
He said he was taking the time before he dropped his estradiol intake from 8 milligrams a day to 7. I did notice that. I did pick up on that. So I mean, we don't treat postmenopausal women with 7 milligrams of estradiol. At least I don't. So,
So what about hematocrit when he's taking that level of testosterone at that age?
it'll go up, you know.
Yeah.
But so actually that I'm not all that concerned about. You know, as long as the you know, it's not the platelets and the white count are normal. Hematocrit is usually the only reason we lower it is for, you know, society's sake. But technically, you know, you're not going to get blood clotting from if you come to the lecture on next week, I have the statistics there for you.
Well, you know what? I was writing it down because I'm very interested. I'd like to come because I tell you, you know, when I did anabolics for the show, I was monitored intensely, but that was for a different reason. Today I'm older. I'm trying to maintain health, and it was I never did growth hormone when I was training for those shows. It was just, you know, anabolics, taking some testosterone and a few other designer anabolics. But and that is, I look back now, and you know, I got away with a lot because the weights we're lifting, the stuff we did to our body. Nevertheless, today being monitored, I'm really watching every single marker to make sure we're okay. And I did have hematocrit levels go up a little bit, so I had 2 phlebotomies during the course to make sure I brought it down. It seems to be fine now. But you're saying that that's not something you're concerned with your patients at the moment.
You know, the patients get, they see on the lab slip that it's flagged highs. But the clotting factors don't change with testosterone, and the statistics as far as a heart attack, you know, coronary occlusions, cerebral occlusions are no different than with placebo. With testosterone. So, and I can get you the literature on that if you want.
Interesting.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Well, good to know.
I wanted to ask you, Stefan, I've seen you using Dr. Jockwish's armbands before, and I'm in physical therapy and I'm getting ready for that setup myself. But OsteoStrong, they're the franchise that has the OsteoStrong process for building up bone strength. Have you looked into any of that? Yes.
Is that the vibration plate that he sells?
It's not just a vibration plate. He actually 10 to 15 seconds once a week. You do a push, you do a pull, you pull up, and you do the leg strength. And they're having huge results. And what's his name? Tony Robbins sponsor.
A prolonged time under tension with that. That's pretty cool. I like that.
Correct.
We're experimenting with his vibe plate now at the office here. My dad really likes it. He's grown a lot of muscle doing that thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
He's also taking MK677.
Better buy a lot.
So, but you know, I have a suspicion that it'll straighten itself out at some point. One of these kind of opening salvo kind of things. So, and that's just my own. I'm trying to find the statistics here for you. So you guys talk amongst yourselves, and I'll find it here.
All right, can I be heard?
Yes, you can.
Hey, 2 months ago, went on Ozempic, wiped me out. Side effects were horrific. So I only got like 3 shots in, right? Skipped a week, did another week, tried it every time, wiped me out, made me feel like I was dying, right? Really bad. And so anyway, just started the another one of those things. Monjuro, is it?
Monjuro.
Well, anyway, same side effects, same symptoms, wipe me out. I've only done it once and I'm afraid to do it twice. So just thought I would mention that. And I could show you my good number. It's 147, man. That's pretty cool. But the side effects are horrific. So all this are pretty important issues. And without these drugs, the sugar goes up 100 points. So there has to be
for that. You know what I mean? He does.
I think you need some of our adulterated stuff. So like I said, we put in BPC 157, we put in B6, We use tiny dose micro doses 5 days a week instead of a once a week shot. And then we have all of our patients now. I don't know, I hit on this, I don't even know where I came on. All of our patients, we make them get fresh ginger. And our discontinuation rate went down from the drug companies is 44%. Ours was less than 4%. We've had 2 patients in the last 4 months, and we're seeing at least 5 a day, new ones a day.
There you go. The drug works, it brings the sugar down, but the side effects can be killer.
So I'm telling you how to get around it. Anyway, so
Yeah.
can you see the screen here?
I can, yes, yeah.
So this is polycythemia vera versus testosterone-induced vascular complications. And so here's blood clot, general population, cerebrovascular accidents, 5.3 per thousand, testosterone slightly more at 6.2 versus polycythemia at 14.3. So just a slight, it's not really even statistically significant.
Yep.
But look at the heart attacks, actually less than the general population, and DVTs also less than a general population. And if you want to do the math here, especially for blood clots, if you really want to fool them, you see it's 20% less. You know, it's two patients less, but it's 20% less. Okay.
Yeah.
And here's the references here for you. So
Yeah, that's amazing. It's good to know.
okay. And so, and then, you know, so the blood clotting, so polycythemia vera, first of all, is on the rare disease list. It's really not very common. It's a bone marrow tumor. It's genetically 97% genetically induced with the JAK2 and TET2 mutations. Testosterone doesn't do that. EPO is low with the polycythemia versus high with testosterone.
Wow.
And, you get your blood clot strokes and whatnot. You get increased white cells and platelets. All you need to do is look at a CBC to know, you know what it is. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
So this is part of the talk we're doing. Well, I'm doing next week. So
this is in Texas.
in Texas, in Houston. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take an emergency run out there.
If you're interested, go to age here. I'll put it in here for you.
It's agemed.org. I got that written down already for you.
Med.org. So
yeah.
.org.
Got it.
Hey, we got to be polite. It's Dr. Cavalleri, not calorie very. It's
I've been called a lot worse. Ask my ex-wife.
Think of him as a horse. He's a Cavalleri. Let's have respect for this man.
Better by Paul. Didn't I say it right?
Get the name right.
That's okay. It's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate you guys so much.
Thank you, everybody. John,
Thanks.
How's the medical school?
Everything's wonderful, beautiful. I need to talk to you before you take off, though.
All right.
Not tonight, but sometime. So things are good. Things are good.
All right, great. All right. Good night, everybody. Dr. Block.
Oh, yeah. Did you want me to make a few remarks about? We're having a meeting on the 18th. I sent that meeting detail to Bill. He can send out to everyone. We're discussing a parallel health system, creating a network of medical offices, pharmacies, our own imaging centers, laboratories, our own licensing, basically everything to separate us from the corrupt medical system, which is now banning peptides, which we're all fans of peptides, right? We know that's a profit move on big pharma, corrupt FDA, the whole link there. So if you're interested in separating yourself from the corrupt medical industrial complex, please join the meeting and to learn more on the 18th.
Okay. I think it was wasn't it the 19th?
19th? Okay, I forget. Send the details out to everyone.
You guys are all intense.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Hey, John, did you go to OMED at least?
Nah, man. This is the only group I deal with right here. I am spoiled. I'm good with this.
Okay. All right. So,
What was the email, Stefan, that you sent? It wasn't under Iron Direct Primary Care, right? It was.
I'm pretty sure I sent it to you too, Joel.
You did. I'm just looking for it, and it's not under the Iron Direct.
No, it's under ironmedicinepA@gmail.com. That's what I use for professional.
Okay, got you.
The other one's for patients.
Okay, perfect.
Good.
Okay, all right, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Stefan. How's
Thanks
Matt?
again, gentlemen. Have a good night.
No answer. He cut off. Okay, John. Say hello to Sylvia. Okay.
All right, thanks, bye.
All right, good night, everybody. Jackie, thank you if you're still on. Everybody else, we'll see you again. I'll have this up as soon as I can, and that's it. Good night, everybody.